go ahead and start the meeting. First thing is to approve the minutes from last month. I don't see the minutes in the packet, though. Maybe I'm missing them though.
They were on there before.
You may just,
They are not public.
No policy.
It's weird because they were
Yeah.
showing that.
Well,
Previously,
we've
before
had
it
some
published.
very interesting problems with iCompass in the last couple of days, and I'm not sure exactly, all of a sudden. The other day, it was wanting us to send this group workflow that only we have to do for city commission, and we don't have to do that for these boards, so. We've had a couple of later evenings dealing with it, so.
yeah, it was like, there was a portal thing too. When the agenda was first posted, it was weird. It was like, you have to log on to.
Well, if it's a program that is in any way touched by Amazon Web Systems, it's probably been impacted by the periodic outages that have been happening today.
Yeah, we
So,
talked about that before.
I lost Smartsheet access for like 6 hours today. It was really tough to do anything work related, so I can sympathize. IT drains suck.
We may just have.
There is no file at all.
Yeah.
Along with this meeting's minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, we can table it until next month
Yeah.
to report it back.
Okay, and then, that's okay.
Figure it out.
And then any public comment in the room?
There's no public online.
I would assume everyone who's here is either on the board or is with
Yep.
MSO or transit, hopefully.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to the first agenda item on the non-motorized project prioritization policy.
Right, that is a mouthful. Jake Baldwin, Engineering Program Manager at MSO, for those of you who don't know me. So I'm presenting for feedback tonight, the 5-year bike ped plan for non-motorized projects. And what this plan is really is a framework for allocating the funds in the capital improvement plan from 2026 to 2030 for the sidewalk bike ped improvements project. There's a lot of information that goes into this process, so I'll try to kind of navigate through it somewhat logically as we get to the 5-year plan itself. But the projects in this plan are scored through the non-motorized projects prioritization policy. This is a policy that evolves kind of year to year as different things change. In this past year, the policy's become an internal policy. Is updated to incorporate active transportation populations as well as additional safety points for vulnerable road user high injury network. So once those changes were made, the models were rerun and it produces lists of scores for both bike projects and pedestrian projects. And those lists are attached later on in the agenda item. And then we go through and program the prioritized projects against the funding we've got to try to look at how we can navigate the next 5 years of tackling these projects kind of in an intelligent way, given again the funding constraints. So that policy says that every year we're going to bring it to the Connected City Advisory Board to get feedback, and then we'll follow that up by going to the City Commission and for approval. When City Commission approves the 5-year plan, really all they're doing is approving the allocation for the first year of the plan. So in this case, the project's in their 2026 year. That's because all the out year projects that are selected in the plan are subject to change next year when we bring it back. The changes can be happening for various reasons. For instance, funding changes. We could have changes again to that non-motorized projects prioritization policy. Grant opportunities occur, which cause us to shuffle things around. Price changes can affect projects, and then feedback from the board and from the City Commission can affect what we'll present the following years. So with that, Christine, if you could bring up, perfect, you've got the bike plan up there, and I'm going to be talking off of, I think, page 8 of the PDF here, which is the 5-year plan while we're looking at the dashboard. So basically the dashboard goes hand in hand with the bike project list that you see in a 5-year plan. So Christine, if you can just click on the green piece of the pie there, that's going to show us what projects are selected. So looking at the plan in 2026, we've got funded the Massachusetts Multimodal Project. This is a project that's been around for a few years. We've developed the planning process and design and community engagement that's gone into that. We've got CIP funds, we've got operating and grant funds in here. We do have a little bit, I think the difference between all that is maybe $150,000 from this CIP project. So we're looking at going into construction, I believe, of that project this summer, so that allocation will happen. And then we've got funds for design of shared use paths on Sixth Street from Monterey Way to Castled. And the important piece of that is it's kind of continuing the work that we've done over the last few years to extend that shared use path out on Sixth Street, and it's kind of the last piece of the pie there. And then there's a shared use path on 31st Street down at the bottom on the south from Atchison Avenue to Lawrence Avenue. I guess I don't wish I could go up there and talk and point at the same time. 20
Laser pointer.
Yeah, that would be handy. So just running through the list here of the plan in 2027, we've got funds for designing a Lawrence Loop project yet to be determined. There's still a lot of planning work that's going to go into what that project may or may not be. In addition to what grants become available, different projects may fit into that grant criteria better than others. So again, in 2027, we'll build those shared use paths we just talked about. Then we move into 2028, and the hope is that we'll have a grant for a Lawrence Loop project that we could build in 2028. Again, a lot of that's unknown. So I imagine that we'll, as we know more, that will evolve in next year's plan. And then we would also start planning design of a New Hampshire Street and 9th Street bikeways project. And see if you go back to the green selected. Yeah. So that's basically this area right here. Those projects, if you look at the bike project list, moved at the top when we rescored it. So it kind of made sense to aggregate them together and look at a planning phase and design phase before we move into construction of that in 2029. And then really the last project on our bike side of the list is the 13th Street, Massachusetts to Burroughs Creek Bikeway. Yep, thank you, Christina. So this project has been in our 5-year plan probably for the last 5 years. It keeps lingering in the out years of the plan. We've always recognized that a lot of effort happened when we did the 21st Street Bike Boulevard with this. There wasn't enough funds to build them both, and there wasn't a lot of I think political will to go with both at the time. It was build 21st, let's see how it operates, and then maybe use those lessons on 13th Street. But again, that project, as we've evolved, the policy has scored lower and lower, so it's become less of a priority. So we've typically just put it on the out years of the project to recognize, hey, we've got some investment in here. It's kind of in the community's mind, and we want to keep it on the plan.
Why did it decrease in score? No,
I would have to go back and look at the metrics over the years. I honestly couldn't say which. I know it's gone down multiple years, but I couldn't tell you which ones affected it. Let's see. Yeah, can we look at the pedestrian dashboard now, please? Let's take a look at the green, please. Before I jump into these dashboards are really neat though, because it shows you all the projects in the list. So if you can click on the gray and see everything that's unfunded, you'll really see the scope of the problem and how we're trying to tackle it with the limited funds. But it's also fun because that yellow piece that says completed has grown a lot over the years, and it's fun to see the progress we've been making on both bike and pedestrian projects. So it's always a fun time of year when we get to update this map and see the progress that's been made. So again, jumping into our 2026 pedestrian projects. The first one on the list, I basically calling it the crossing project. We've got crossings at 10th and Delaware, Bob Billings and Bristol, just outside the window here. Vermont Street at the library, and then we've got some ramps we need to improve at 14th Street and Barker.
Well, there's someone that needs admitted, please. Sorry.
Oops. Let me use my correct. Got him.
Okay.
Oh,
All right. So the crossing project, we're actually, I want to try to get the design going on about as soon as possible. That way we can try to build those improvements next year. Might be a little tight, but that's going to be the goal. And then we also want to design sidewalk gap project at North Third around KTA entrance. That's basically everything and up you see in North Lawrence. There are all those green lines. Just a large sidewalk gap network that when we redid our pedestrian project scoring jumped to the top. So getting all those done at the same time became priority. In 2027, we would build that project as well as begin design on the next Safe Routes to School project. If you're not familiar with those, it's what we just built on Osdale Road and wrapped up not too long ago, both north and south of 23rd Street. We've had a lot of success winning transportation alternative grants for that program. So we will keep plugging away at our Safe Routes to School and utilize that funding mechanism. 2028, we would hope to build that. And one thing I hope to see change in 2028 is like right now I've got listed 80% max construction. So historically, those grants have provided 80% of the construction cost. The one we have going right now, that they're paying for the design and they're paying for all of construction. So hopefully when we update this, we'll have higher grant numbers on there, which allows us even more flexibility in the plan. And then 2029 and 2030 is just design and construction of a large gap project. Michigan Street, Vermont Street, 18th Street, 23rd Street, 24th, Hilltop in Alabama. Those are kind of scattered all over. And then I guess the last thing, looking at the plan, there's that table down below those two sides, and that really just shows the funding and cash flow of the program because we've got to be able to show that we can make this work year over year. So we want to see a running balance on that far right column after every year. We've got about $183,000 left through the 5 years of the plan. So that gives us a little bit of flexibility and shows we're trying to spend everything we can. And we also attempt to split somewhat evenly or mostly evenly the amount we're allocating for bike and pedestrian projects. And if you see there, we're just over $2 million for each of those, a little more heavy on the bike project, but that's always going to be project dependent.
Hey, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, this is a great time for questions. I think I'm done.
Well, thank you. This is great. I saw like that the raise build grant projects have been removed.
Yes.
Is that because of federal stuff?
I mean, it was in there as a placeholder in case we
Yeah.
won the grant and we did not win the grant.
Okay,
So, I mean, if we have opportunities in the future, I could see these landing right back in the plan.
okay, cool. Yeah, because I saw like the crossing right here is moving forward, which is awesome because obviously transit station people crossing right here all the time. And I think that was part of like the raise.
Yes, it was.
grant, but I see we're still gonna move forward with it despite that.
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
So are there things, and maybe it doesn't matter, right? Because it's like regardless, the raise grant didn't proceed, but we're still gonna, or we didn't get it, but we're still gonna proceed with things that were perhaps gonna be funded by that. Is there anything else? I don't know what my question is here. I guess it was just like, what happened with the raise grant and I don't know.
So that raise grant had multiple scope improvements in it, you know,
Yeah.
it was like, I want to say 75% ADA reconstruction. So
Yes.
those projects or those existing sidewalks would be handled through our ADA transition plan for the right of way and funded through that. There were some small gaps in that grant, and those would be funded through this plan.
Okay, cool. The other thing I was thinking about is earlier this year, we got information about this program, C-Click Fix, which is awesome. And so since then, I've been sort of tinkering around with it, and now I get email updates when there's something that gets reported. And with sidewalk reconstruction, with those, like I've seen some of those requests in there. Do those feed in any way with this?
No, they don't feed into our 5-year plan because it's existing assets, and this is focused on building new assets, right?
Okay, okay.
So when we get those sidewalk complaints, though, I get copied on a lot of them, but you know, we've got Evan Carenta, our ADA compliance administrator. He tracks a lot of those, and he he basically oversees the funding and how that funding goes to those. So he looks at ones that are on the priority routes and tries to get those taken care of.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. These are all new construction as opposed to reconstruction. Cool, thank you. I have more questions, but I'll open it up to other people too. right.
I have a couple.
Go for it.
Oh, go ahead, Nick. Go ahead, Nick.
I was just kind of waiting for everybody in the room to finish because it's kind of awkward to butt in over Zoom. I'll do my best. So I was going to ask, has policy changed since we last saw this in like 2023? And Jake, you already answered that. So it's cool to see that there is now incorporation of new kind of data sets to make this a little bit better suited to us, which is good. Did that come from like the Vision Zero work or just kind of general new research that's been coming out? I guess, what was the impetus for revising the rubric?
So yeah, the Vision Zero did add in the vulnerable user high injury network scoring, added basically additional 2 points to the safety aspect of the scoring. And I think, I don't know, I was hoping Jessica would be on here to speak to the other scoring, but before we had transportation disadvantaged was like a quarter of the scoring, and it got replaced with basically density, looked at population density. So those kind of got swapped out.
Interesting.
Is
Okay.
that the active transportation policy?
Yes.
Population?
Yes.
Yes.
Active transport.
Oh, okay,
Sorry.
so that's the density, that's okay, because I was wondering, like, the values with, like, how do you find that, the projects that are within okay. Who's more likely to walk, biker, right? Sorry, please continue, Nick.
That's an interesting point. So just out of curiosity, from, I guess, an equity standpoint, does that mean that we've now taken what was once a very equity-based metric, like who has to walk and bike, to now a more, I don't know, almost realistic metric of who is probably going to walk and bike? I'm kind of curious of the story behind how that got switched out.
I mean, I think that's probably accurate, but I'm not sure I'm the best to answer that, Nick.
Okay, no worries. I just want to make sure I wasn't reading too much into it. So, okay. I had a couple kind of more specific questions, but before I even launch into that, is this the forum for talking about individual projects that are really at like the kernel of idea phase? Because some of these I never heard before, and they're very exciting, but I don't know anything about them. What's the right forum for that?
I mean, we get requests for projects all the time, Nick, and we just have to look and see if they are applicable to either of these plans. And then, typically we will add them in and score them. A lot of times we know before we add them in that they're not going to score well, but sometimes we're surprised and they do. So you never know.
Okay.
A lot of times our bike plan and our PED plan have already identified a lot of those needs.
So I wonder if some of the ones that scored pretty high that I haven't heard of before are like, maybe citizen requests. Like, for example, I wasn't aware that there was anything going up and down New Hampshire Street. I mean, if somebody bikes up and down there, it seems fine, but I'm also an able-bodied bike enthusiast. So like, I don't know what it's like for anybody else, right? So that one's curious to me. Is that part of like the primary, secondary bike network? Is it part of the closure of the Lawrence Loop? How does that one fit in, for example?
Well, I mean, your yes is the answer to a lot of those.
Okay.
I've got the columns in my spreadsheet that kind of tell me the score. So they're getting a lot of points for being approved projects in the bikes plan. They're maxing that out. Bike demand is very high for those projects. ADT, of course, is very high. And then they're also on the vulnerable user high injury network. So they're kind of maxing out scores in most of the categories.
Very interesting. Okay. I guess part of this is tricky because the whole idea of these newer projects is that they don't have a defined morphology. Like, what is it going to look like, right? Like, it's something for bikes, but what? Is it a protected bike lane? Is it a completely separate bike way?
Right.
Is it just Sharrow's marking? So, like, how do you even go about guessing what the potential cost of that might be? Like, do you have some idea in mind of what it might be, or is it still completely open-ended?
No, don't know what it's going to cost. So,
Okay. Okay.
I toyed with, or no, I actually did it. So this is the first time in this plan I've actually included a planning phase, simply because we don't know what that is. So there's going to have to be some community involvement and planning work to determine what those facilities are going to be. Once we know them, then we can design them.
Very interesting. Okay. That was another follow-up question I was going to ask, but we just kind of concluded that. And that was like, some of these are so early on that, I mean, we're at the point in the process where you could even ask the question if it's applicable. Like, is this the right project? Is this the right location for a project? Which is kind of what this whole thing is about. I've been trying to take my continuing education credits for my envision framework certification. I was like, oh yeah, there's this whole stage where it's like, do we want to build this project at all? And I know Lawrence does that as well. So yeah, it sounds like this is our part of our effort to ask those questions at the right time. Cool. There's another question about KU stuff. There's a couple of projects mentioned in the list that say, like, don't worry about this when it's on KU land. I don't know enough about how things break down. Are those private streets for them, or is that under the city's control?
It depends where you're at, right?
Okay, fair enough.
I kind of got into this with Dave Cronin when we were looking at some of our line needs to change because we'll have a line going from A to B and KU responsibility is in between there. So we need to clean that up a little bit. And we're trying to figure out what the best way to present that is, or do we leave those projects in and just label them KU? Because we're not going to fund those. We've got so many other needs. We're not going to fund their needs.
Do they fund their needs on their, I mean, I guess it's just like a completely independent set of transportation improvement projects that happens on their campus, on their streets, that we have zero control over, right? Yeah, it just is what it is. All right. Well, it's all from me. This is very enlightening. I'm very glad to see this again. It's looking good.
I see that like there's priorities or points given for higher volume roads, arterials or collectors.
Yes.
I'm just thinking like how unpleasant those places are to walk or bike, like if I have a choice between walking down the sidewalk on Iowa versus, I don't know, walking in just Alabama Street, I'm just making something up, right? Like I'm gonna go with the lower volume road just because I'm not like surrounded by that chaos. And same thing goes for biking. Like I will avoid a higher volume road, but I understand that because they're higher volume roads, they're more dangerous for crashes. So like, how do we balance that? Like where we want to send cyclists and pedestrians and where they desire to ride or walk and where to put infrastructure upgrades.
The projects we are going to fund are coming through the planning work of the bikes plan. So I think that's where that work would happen. Identify where the priority network is and where the secondary network is.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about that shared use path on 6th Street, again, a high volume road. And so you're giving a good buffer there with the shared use path. And even still, I think
yeah, I'm still not gonna take it.
Yeah, would I want to ride on 6th if I could go on a different neighborhood street? Probably not, unless that was my only choice. And then I also think my other thing with shared use paths, this is just my experience though, is like they still have the crossing conflicts, like a sidewalk that a cyclist is riding on, where the driver may not see them because they're off to the side. So like, how do we balance those things too?
Right.
But also it's a high volume road. And so you don't want to put people on that road, right?
So you've got like the level of comfort matrix
Right.
in the bikes plan that kind of says, if this is the type your road are on, here are your 2 or 3 options. You don't have all 8 options,
Yeah, totally. So I'm wondering like how that safety prioritization, why we're giving priority to roads that have such high vehicle traffic.
I think some of it might be they're the destination points too. So if you're trying to bike to work, bike to the store, locations, then you're gonna have to get on that.
Yeah, like there are some
Yeah, that's the
dental offices that are right along that stretch, I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure. So that,
And Jessica has unmuted, so she
Yes.
may have
Thank
something to
you
add
so
here.
much. I'm sorry I'm late. I got stuck in court. And I would say a lot of those are determined because the projects fed into this matrix come out of the approved plans. So those were networks that were prioritized for investments in either bicycle or pedestrian infrastructure because they were identified in the planning process. And so every 5 years when we update those planning processes, that's the point in time where we can continue to reevaluate the investments and the decisions we're making about where the priorities lie in terms of connecting networks. But that is always the catch-22 is deciding between connectivity and directness versus parallel alignments, or choosing, even if we would have a parallel alignment, like in a lot of cases, besides 6th Street, 5th Street, or 7th Street, but those both don't go through. And so then, okay, can you get around? Then a lot of times Trail gets used as an alternative parallel alignment to 6th Street in some places, but again, doesn't go through the same places that Sixth Street does. And so those are always the conversations we're having about network priorities. And so we have those in the planning process. And then anything that gets identified as priorities in the bike or ped plans, those are the projects that get fed into this model for funding. And so I think, the reality is, even if somebody hit it on the head just about the destinations, is even if you don't maybe want to take your whole trip on Sixth Street, your destination might be on Sixth Street. So you're going to have to be in that space. And so those are trade-offs that we have to make around planning a network that works for all ages and abilities.
Yeah. Thanks, Jessica. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the problem with West Lawrence too, right? Like, there's not many through roads that go. I mean, and so it's like, it's a land use problem more than a transportation problem, actually. I think because there aren't good alternative roads to get to those destinations. So, yeah, anyways, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Thanks.
No, and I think we'll continue to have those conversations with the community. And the reality is those roads exist and people want to get to places on them, which means for some, we need to build infrastructure there that's going to work, even if there's, caveats to understanding that, yes, every intersection is still, is a conflict point, and we need to be thinking about how people operate there, whether you're on a bike or in a car.
Yeah, I'm thinking about how like this number 3 safety prioritization and the number 4 like density, right? Like, how are those sort of balancing each other maybe in some ways? I don't know that they
Yeah.
are maybe
Well, and so
organically, but
we're scoring, all the things that are getting scored in this are already locations that have been prioritized in the priority network on the bike or secondary network for like the bike projects. For the PED projects, they either got identified because our priorities in the pedestrian plan were connecting both sides of arterial and collector streets and safe routes to school gaps, and gaps that helped us with that we identified in the planning process to access transit, food, or parks. And so we're only starting with a list. We're not starting with the list of every street. We're starting with a list first that is the prioritized network connections. Then we're scoring those, and based on those, we're trying to understand where the highest latent demand is for use on any of those infrastructure. And then also based on those, where they're based on speed or volume, that there may be higher levels of interaction where we should prioritize them because of that. Or if we already have safety issues, that's where what we added that scoring based on our vulnerable road user assessment. So we're already starting very high level with the stuff that we've prioritized in the plans, and then using these matrices to help us score and prioritize once we get to that place of selecting projects for prioritization, like prioritized funding.
Thinking about 13th Street now, like low road volume, it would score differently now than maybe what it was before. I don't know, but I'm just.
Yeah. And I think we can keep continuing to evolve this. I think, as we learn something or we look at it, if we need to look at something more, and as we do the planning process, there could be a conversation about what that is. But in the bikeway plan, in some of those places, there's only so many locations that we can kind of be informed about where we can choose our connections. And you talk about the land use decisions, the east and west divide is going to, or in some parts of that, in terms of how our community has grown and the curvilinear style development versus a grid development, we're left with fewer options in some places about where we can even choose to put a bikeway because there isn't infrastructure, because there's already built infrastructure there, and the nature of the geometry of that infrastructure.
Yeah.
But I'll remind you too, the whole reason we created this scoring process is so we could use some objective scoring to be able to select and prioritize projects, as opposed to what used to happen 10 plus years ago is everyone or anybody who had a voice with privilege came and lobbied for their project, right? And so we really wanted to bring more intentionality to focusing on connection, like connecting some sort of priority network, right? That's why we called it a priority network. And in both cases, it's about where those connections lie in terms of destinations and desires for the community to have connection, but also just to ensure that we're doing it in a systematic way that we can continue to make connectivity happen to get a primary network instead of, just having one-off projects based on whoever has the loudest voice to come lobby for their project. it was done out of a consideration really for all members of our community, so we can think more highly about diverse needs that aren't just maybe the people that come speak to us out of, to lobby the city commission for funding.
One other question I'm thinking of, Jessica, is facilities and sort of weighting those. What happens when they close, like schools, for example, and we're making 5-year plans and those decisions
Yeah.
can happen really quickly.
Yeah.
Or
So
grocery stores close or whatever,
yeah, so some things like the school things, we have a provision in our Safe Routes to School plan that with school closures, we update those plans. And so I would say when we update those plans, the project list could change. You're right. Projects do come off of the list, and there have been with the most recent school closures, projects that are no longer safe routes, that because that's how they got added to the list, they know now are, they're no longer in the prioritization for like a sidewalk infrastructure, right? The land use stuff, the other stuff is a little bit harder. That's more about like when we update the model. So, and that's more of like every 5 years. So you're right. There could be some delay for some of those things. We continue to iterate, right? We're doing our best with the information that we have available to us. But like the most recent new grocery store that opened, it changed locations, which is going to impact a future model, right?
Yep.
And in the meantime, we thankfully, all of those are also primarily, I think they're all on arterial streets. So they're all going to score highly in terms of access to transit and other things like that, in terms of some of the land use decisions where that's still a commercially zoned property that could have another destination in it that has maybe not as high in our scoring, but still high use and demand for a destination in our community. But it may take a couple of years for us to catch up in the modeling to that. I'm not sure, you just can't make projections about all of those things. You just have to continue to do the best we can and evolve it to kind of bring some data-driven perspective to making decisions.
Any other questions?
There's still transportation alternatives funding.
Yes.
Okay. That's from like pass through from feds through the
Yes.
state. Okay.
Yep.
Great, because I see the placeholders for those safe routes to schools. Okay. To know, and no problems with Mass Street funding coming through. But it's great. Anyone else? Comments? Awesome. Thank you, Jake.
You get what you needed, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't hear any specific feedback that we may necessarily need to report to city commission unless you want to direct me to.
I don't know. I can.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
We want to voice our support for destruction though. I support it. I think it's a good plan and thoughtful.
Mhm. Yeah, I think my only concern is just like traffic volume, and I know that's a balancing act, right? I don't know.
Well, it's something for us to keep in mind as we're thinking through these things. I know,
Yeah.
like Jessica says, we're always evolving, and so
Yeah, it may,
things to think about and conversations to have as we go through these processes, so.
yeah, maybe the next time we have different weighting factors because we want to weight less used traffic routes for like cars more like you're suggesting. And that would necessarily require a different preference matrix than what we've laid out in the policy so far.
I
It's
think-
possible.
I think my favorite design that we've done is that 23rd in Iowa, where those sort of like pedestrian islands. I don't think they're called that, but where you're not in conflict with turning traffic. So it's like I know that we've designed and implemented things on high volume roads that make it more comfortable for shorter crossing distances, which is what I assume the goal is when we're doing those kinds of interventions or projects on high volume roads.
Yeah, and for example, that project didn't originate out of bike or ped planning. That project originated because of safety, right? And crash data. And so that was a project that was pursued by engineers to get a highway safety improvement program and HSIP grant funding to fund that. And so I think there's always continued work that we can be doing in regards to Vision Zero, where we just are talking about safety for all users on all roadways, and identifying stuff that we can continue to pursue a grant funding to help us improve.
Is there a way we can, like you said, I think it's a land use problem more than a,
Transportation problems, you know.
yeah, insert ourselves earlier into the development process rather than just reacting to these designs where bikes and pedestrians are kind of an afterthought, that they're more built in so that you don't have Fifth and Seventh Street not going all the way through, or you don't have a viable way to ride on 23rd without feeling like you're gonna get turned into.
Yeah, I think the land development code update did a little bit of that to help some of those situations in terms of just building bikeways with development. I think there's probably still more to be done in subdivision regulations and street design standards work that still is to address some of those issues.
Yeah, it's probably planning commission stuff more than connected city, but
Yeah.
like our work follows that planning
Yeah.
and land use design so much that.
This feels kind of reactive rather than proactive.
Unfortunately, with the age of our community, a lot of this stuff will be, and the new development stuff as it starts to move forward. I mean, the feedback you're giving in this space, our engineers and our, transportation planning folks are hearing. So those are things that we're gonna watch for as we're going through, or we already are watching for in some way, shape or form. But fixing what's already in the built design is what you guys are facing in this conversation.
Yeah.
These types of projects for
Yeah.
the most part.
Yeah.
That's hard. You have
It's
to
hard stuff.
pick up new space that isn't necessarily available.
I also think when roads have to be closed for design stuff to get around, so like I bike my kid to school and along Maple and 19th and that intersection is closed. And so to get around it is really something because we don't have a parallel road that's within good distance. There's 23rd and there's 15th, but either way, you're going pretty far out of your way if you're on a bike. So I'm like, I kind of wind my way through a subdivision to get back around, but it kind of speaks to that, like it's a land use issue more than just this intersection being closed, right?
Yeah, because it's a tiny amount that's closed, actually.
Yeah,
there.
it's
And
very
I just
cool.
ride through the construction.
It's blocked tonight. I did that too. And then I have a very small question. Has anybody flagged the intersection on Sixth Street where it turns onto the bridge? I've seen bikes and pedestrians almost get hit there many times
You
recently.
mean at Mass?
Or Iowa.
No, by City Hall, right by City Hall where you turn.
Yeah, so like
That's
Massachusetts.
gotten new traffic direction, super dangerous for pedestrians and bikers.
With the changes to the intersection?
It's much worse, yes.
I've not heard that one before.
No.
Where and how? When you're heading north?
So
En
let's
masse.
say you're coming down like towards City Hall and you're gonna turn onto the bridge, people are not looking for people crossing.
Okay, so like you're going around the curve from New Hampshire that becomes Sixth and then you would turn right to go onto Mass Street
Yeah.
from there.
Or you.
The other
you're
way.
going from-
Or the other way.
Pretty
going
bad.
around. Mhm.
That's gotten really bad for pedestrians with the new traffic flow. But that's just a tiny little data point.
Yeah, I think that's gonna have to continue to be part of our conversation about the closing the loop connection and if there isn't a phased alternative in that space to do improvements there, for separation. Talking about what other alternatives could be.
We're still looking at the Lawrence Loop, Bircham Park, up north to McDonald. Well, I guess.
Yeah, Bertram Park to New York is the highest rated loop portion, but it's listed as future grant because it Wasn't it CIP? I thought I saw on the map that it was orange.
Yeah, CP's fine.
CIP is a project that's currently funded in the CIP.
Yeah.
Right.
And yes, it's orange.
Virginia, New York, and then below was Michigan is interesting.
Mhm.
I told Dave this, I mean, he's probably heard it, but I'm like, can we put a protected bike lane on Michigan to close that section? Because I've heard that those landowners aren't gonna sell up there and.
Yeah, that project has been canceled.
Yeah, so I'm like, well, we could just connect it with protection right there and finish it off.
Yeah, I
The city owns the
I don't
asset.
think I would feel comfortable riding down Michigan. There are definitely people who go fast on that.
Well, with protection, be different.
Yeah.
All right, I'm fine, I'm comfortable. Do we make a motion to signal support?
Yeah, you reviewed it and you support.
Yeah.
What was presented, I think that would be, like, just that you reviewed it and support. So.
Yeah. Do you want to make a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Mm.
You support your name.
Oh,
What's that?
It's Jenny.
Jenny.
Okay.
And
The 5-year plan. Is there a specific thing it would be helpful for us to support?
The 2026 to 2035 year budget.
A second. All those in favor?
I
Motion passes unanimously.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks.
Okay, let me get back up to the top of this agenda.
Vision Zero.
All right, I think I will be taking over the map here.
This in the months.
So we are presenting the Vision Zero dashboard. It was created as part of the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant that was completed earlier this year. The city commission approved the plan by resolution in June, and we did a presentation to this committee in May. Dashboard.
You're gonna check.
You are screen sharing it, so.
Okay, there we go. Vision Zero dashboard. Responding to the mouse either, so.
Is considered highway.
Iowa is?
59.
State.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Just
been a
looking-
part of 40 and 59 for a long time.
So I'm not sure what's on the screen, but I'm happy to answer questions when we pull that up.
Looking at the Vision Zero dashboard right
Yeah.
now.
Okay,
I
so
was just-
so the dashboard was produced by our consultant on the Vision Zero project. And
You hear us and see the Vision Zero dashboard. Okay, gremlins continue tonight, folks.
okay, I'm scared to move screens, but let's give it a shot. And I broke it again.
It's sharing this screen, not yours.
Oh,
Yeah, I went ahead and shared.
So she's gonna share it.
okay.
I'm gonna drive again.
All right. So Vision Zero was for the entire county. So we have Lawrence, Eudora, and Baldwin all represented. But this is the crashes from the entire Douglas County for a 5-year span. So when the dashboard was developed, a lot of those statistics that you saw previously were for 2019 through 2023. Once the city took over control of the dashboard, that was one of our first practice runs, was adding in the 2024 data and archiving the 19. So that it will always show the 5 years of most recent crash data that we have available. There are a few different ways to sort the data in here. So we can kind of give just a few examples and then answer questions, but you can do things like sort by just what is going on in Eudora, which is a little wide there. It is reactive to the zoom, so you can see we had 37 crashes in this area. There's the key down here for whether that was possible injury, fatal injury, suspected minor injury, or suspected serious injury. You can see the number of fatalities involved. We do have specific controls for vulnerable road users. So you can look at just the crashes that involved someone who is outside of a motor vehicle. You can look by year, look at just crash severity. We could say suspected serious injury and see only those crashes for, let's say, Lawrence. So this tool will be a way that that the public can keep track of where we're seeing crashes and what types of crashes. You can click on each of the individual incidents and see additional information, location, collision with pedal cycle, tells you what type of accident it was. You can see if there were adverse conditions such as rain, what the lighting conditions were, whether or not drugs or alcohol were related, and what type of injury occurred. And so this is in support of the Vision Zero plan, which aims to eliminate all fatal and serious injury crashes on the roadway.
Do you know if we start doing reports of distracted driving as part of what they're reporting on now?
I don't know that for sure, but I can ask our reps. So this would be how this data is collected. These are crash reports prepared by the police department that are sent into the state and aggregated and then sent back for reporting. So I know in the Vision Zero process, we did talk about like one of the kind of adjustments that can be made at that state level is if there was a serious injury, and then let's say that they passed a few days later, that's not going to be in the initial crash report, but the state would correct that. Or it's sent back. So there are some limitations. There's one in here that I highlight just as an example for. We had a fatality a few years back at near 15th and Haskell. Because that person was walking their bike across the road, they were a pedestrian in that instance. And so just those are some of the kind of specifics of those crash reports and how they are developed and submitted. But this will be open to the public. It is currently on our Vision Zero page online, which will be maintained going forward. And every year we will update it so that information is available to the public.
How far back does the data go right now?
5 years?
Yeah, so we just added one, so now it will only go back to 2020 currently. And it'll always maintain that 5-year window.
Okay, so we're gonna discard data once we are done with it.
It will go off of this dashboard specifically, but we'll still have a record for, reporting, storytelling as we make safety improvements in the community.
I think there's a lot more robust data on our, I mean, this is good, on our city website than the state's across the great website. It's not, do you know why we're getting better data? Is it because of the feedback loop through the police to the city, or? Can you repeat what you said, how we get that crash data?
So the police would create a crash report at any incident that they are called to. That is reported back to the state. I'm not sure the intervals of those reports. My understanding, and I would, Jessica might be able to step in on this as well. The dashboard of the state has some additional kind of categories that they're looking at. I think that they highlight certain roads that, they're more focused on arterials, and then of course, state and US highways. And so I think that they're working from the same data set. I think they're highlighting different pieces of the data.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah, so there is some nuance to this work in the sense that oftentimes, like even for the MPO and the safety targets we're setting, we're pulling crash reports, but we're waiting until July of the following year that was completed. So like just this July in 2025, we pulled the 2024 data because there's some time even after a report happens where there can be follow-up information. And some of that has to do with reporting timelines for how the state is required to report, like under highway safety and the statewide highway safety plans, and to the FARS data set, which is like the national fatal data set. And so some of those things, while we can get access to a data feed that is more updated, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's like it can change, I guess, is the point. And so you have to be thoughtful about, are you taking a nearer term feed with the understanding that it's not necessarily finalized and you're looking still at data. And so each of those data sets, I think, like even on the vulnerable road, there's a vulnerable road users dashboard that KDOT has. There's another crash dashboard that they're looking at just fatalities and serious injuries. And those are all like looking at a little bit of different things in their data sets and when their timeline for updating data really falls back to workload. So and Stephen, maybe you could show also in the layers feature where the little stack of hamburgers is on the map. Yep, that and one down.
Oh, that's fine.
There you go. You can turn on and off stuff. So if you want to turn off crashes here, you can also turn on all our safe routes. If you want to see what's in proximity to our safe routes, we have in here our transportation projects that have identified in our transportation improvement program, projects that have identified safety as one of the features of the project. So you can turn that on and look at it in relationship to what's programmed in the tip for crashes. So this has maybe some other just local useful ability for you to look around as members of Connected City that might be useful to you when you're thinking about projects, or whether, project review, or thinking about, bike ped or other elements that you would be able to then also turn on there, the vulnerable road user high injury network. So that's another thing. But the thing, they can't all be on at once, because you'll see it's just, you can't see anything. So the zoom matters in that too, in terms of the ability to zoom in and out. There's a heat map. There's some other different things that are just all different ways to kind of look at what might be relatable information that would be helpful to you in making decisions.
Cool.
If there's something else you'd like to see on here, we can entertain that also.
I mean, I think the distracted driving thing is a reporting issue, but I do think that I would encourage the police to start to gather that data.
Yeah. If you click on any of the crashes on the actual, like if you turn the crash layer back on and you're zoomed into a specific crash, that Douglas County crashes. If you zoom into a specific crash, you can also click on the crash and it's going to reveal information about that specific crash. And so you can scroll through and see what types of information that they provided, that they pulled off of that Kansas Motor Vehicle Accident Report form.
A sense of what the major drivers are of serious accidents. Just looking at this, it looks like there's fast roads and some particular intersections, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe there's something else. What are the biggest causes of accidents?
Oh, we gotta remove some filters, because right now we're only looking at pedestrian related. So I think it probably depends. That question could be answered a lot of ways, depending probably on what types of crashes you're looking at or what you're talking about in terms of that. But
Fatal crashes, and I'm just asking for your kind of gut sense of what are the things that we need to address to make.
I can't answer. I think you got to look at our whole Vision Zero plan if you want to answer that question, like at a high level in the angles we looked at it. I don't think it's a simple question I can answer just like on the spot right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to evade it. I'm just saying there's a lot of nuance to it. So in the sense of like, there may be a higher volume of crashes, of overall crashes for all users on higher volume, higher speed streets. And that's probably pretty typical. But then when you look at, maybe if you zoom into just bike or ped crashes, those may be more severe in places where they're higher volume, but there's also a lot in places where there's just the more likely predominance of people biking and walking.
Yeah, in fact, it becomes a density graph, and that's, population density graphs are nice for what they show, but it's not really benefiting us a whole lot.
It helps you to
Assessment
keep
of
math
safety.
with the severity at the same time. I did that
Yeah,
one.
I think I'm getting at a slightly different question, which is a little bit what Hillary was alluding to. Like, is there some other factor here, like distracted driving, or it's night, or is there some other thing that we need to address that you can't necessarily easily tell from a map?
Well, and I think there's probably a lot of things. That's where I would encourage you to go look at our Vision Zero action plan, because in particular, you can read through the whole report and look at where it's focusing on areas based on high injury network, where there's high risk and actuality for high, injury, crashes, fatality, or serious injuries. But there's a whole analysis in the appendices that's like a detailed safety analysis that's going to show you a lot more charts, and that's not location specific. It's going to show you types of crashes, types of roadways, speed. It's going to show you, a lot more information than I can answer just in a single
Thanks, that's helpful.
question.
I think when we looked at the data, Jenny, it was like the most dangerous time of year was right now, October. It was like fall around KU at dusk. So, and like when students are walking, it's darker earlier, that sort of.
Well, and also when you mentioned dusk, there's the aspect of, especially if you're driving into the sunset, drivers are going to lose their vision a lot more than they otherwise would.
It's
I could see that being
28 and 29 of the action plan.
Using the dashboard, if you filter just to suspected serious injury and fatal injury, and if you clicked no alcohol or drug, you'll see there's 10 fatalities. And then if you click, like, there was 5 that were alcohol, 5 that were drug, and some of those overlap, right? So there's some of that, but it doesn't necessarily point to also a particular area.
I have a question, Jessica. On the map, it has like at the bottom type of intersection. Like, I don't know what a T intersection, a Y intersection, or an L intersection are.
T would be like where a road goes one way.
Yeah.
Three-way stop like this. Trying to think. Monterey Way and Bob Billings would probably be the biggest T intersection I can think of that I'd use. Y, what would be a Y?
I was thinking why is when it
But
splits,
I would
right?
love to
Yeah.
hear from city staff actually on this one. Who probably can answer this better than any of us.
Go for that one, or do you want somebody else?
Seeing if Dave Cronin was still on, but I think he was just able to listen for a certain amount of time.
And so Hillary, if you have other questions you want to follow up with too, even if we can't answer them specifically, these are all defined in the motor vehicle accident report guide. There's a whole guide that like defines every single entry that law enforcement uses. And so we can share some of those resources too to help clarify any of the wording they have, because a lot of it's based on how they report data, basically.
Can we change that language and how we display it to the public? Because nobody would know what that is.
Possibly, although we would have to reclassify it then, and then we get into just an issue with like, are we, you know what I mean? Is there really the ability to do that or not, right? We would need engineers and probably law enforcement to weigh in on that if we were going to do that. But I understand your concern. It's part of the challenge in putting out a resource like this, is because I think sometimes it's going to raise just as many questions as it may hope to try to answer. But the idea is transparency and information. So.
And then, you know me, I always say there's no such thing as an accident. They're all preventable crashes.
Yes, crashes.
And
I like that.
And I know that the PD's form uses accident language, which is why I assume it's used on here, but.
Yeah, well, the name of the form is accident report form. So, I mean, it's baked into the whole premise of the work they're doing.
Yeah.
And that some of that nuance around crash and accident is in the last 10 years has really evolved, but I don't think that report form has changed in the last 10 years. Yeah.
Who controls that form? Like what it's titled and what is contained in it?
Good
State
question.
law?
I don't actually know the answer to that. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I would assume it's either legislative or it has something, you know what I mean? It's like got to be codified somewhere in a highway in some sort of like public safety.
It may be with the National Transportation Safety Planning. People for that matter, so.
Yeah.
It's a random guess, but that seems possible.
Yeah, I think it looks great. The only thing is I'm like, this Y intersection, L intersection stuff is just. And it's really robust. You know, it's much more built out than the state's website, because my question was always like, are we just replicating what KDOT is producing? And I know this isn't that, so I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, it's really not that. And it's a requirement of Vision Zero efforts that there was a public dashboard. And the hope in that sense is to be able to show what transportation projects for the project part, what is being done in that space around crashes, so the public can understand and hold accountability, I think, in the implementation of Vision Zero, to see what's happening in relationship to areas that are, whether they're vulnerable to road user or high injury network and some of those things. And so since this is also countywide, it goes beyond Lawrence. It's in the other parts of the county, also Durham and Baldwin City were partners with us in this project. And, so the tip was the way that we could funnel countywide projects that were regionally significant as transportation projects into this data set.
Yeah. Any other comments, questions?
I think I saw Nick shake his head.
I'm all good.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Those changes.
Is that the unbanned? All right. Oh, no. Let's see. Let me try this. Sorry. Didn't think this would be.
That's interesting.
Sure. Can I get away with just doing that? No.
Come on, these two things gonna be that.
I know, I
did.
Oh. Okay, that's not great. Can I give you my flash drive to plug it in? This computer is completely failing us today.
It's got a mind of its own, that's for darn sure, doesn't it? Close.
It's probably fine. I will eject it and you got it. All right. I don't know how to make this go away though. Okay.
That's great.
All good.
Maybe I could just. Maybe it's me to drive my work. Like you. Sure, that big update button at the bottom. See. Do you have anything? Zoom even working at all?
It should
Can
be.
you still see? Okay. Ooh.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
promising. Can you hear me?
Okay, now we're probably else. It's just, okay, they can still see it without, all right. Okay.
How would you get through there?
Because our video is frozen.
Right.
It's
A little screen sharing over.
Figured it out.
Oh, wow.
So crazy.
That's really unusual. I don't know if I've ever seen that show up before.
We're inside of the matrix.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, our videos no, moving around on the screen.
Okay, we're just ignore that.
Okay.
Go to text.
Right. I was going, I can lift my.
Anybody can
Make it heavy.
I couldn't do it.
We should probably have a key by Thursday.
Yeah.
I just have my road bike.
Want to check if anybody can hear, can anybody else see the video, so see them nodding,
Let's see.
if they can hear sound.
I don't have it pulled up. I can try and get in there real quick.
Let's just go back.
Yeah,
to
sound
the-
and video are good for mine.
Okay, thanks.
Good enough. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go for
We
it.
have a black screen.
We have a black screen of death going on in here,
Okay.
so just so you know.
Can you see full screen presentation now?
I can see whatever's important when I see a PowerPoint, so.
Okay, there you go.
Have a link to that.
Not.
Well, good.
Okay. Well, you can't see it there either, so that's bad.
Oh.
Is this good?
University.
Okay.
That's great. You took in grad school, right?
Yeah, this is a little bit of a dense presentation that we left to the end, so forgive and we'll see how it goes. So we are proposing a $3 fare for our Lawrence Transit on Demand. You have the authority to approve said fare through our public participation plan, which has been approved by City Commission. So there's a link to the text to that on the next slide. It's required that we do a public survey anytime we propose a fare by FTA. And we're required to also have a public participation plan by FTA. So we are following that public participation plan. The main reason we are proposing a fare is because the grant funding was provided for this particular program will end next year. And so we have a bunch of data and information to share with you about our $3 proposed fare. The survey,
Grant.
AIC grant, it'll come up.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Through the state.
Yep. Yep, so the survey is open till November 2nd. It's on Lawrence Listens. So if you're curious about how it's going, you can read all the responses while they're still coming in. I like Lawrence Listens and other transparent surveys for that purpose. Today is October 20th. You're receiving the background presentation and asking me questions. I will ask you to approve or not approve the fare proposal in November. So this is just kind of, you haven't seen me a lot, so I wanted to, soft launch this and see what questions you had. There's a lot of data here. So we'll go through it. Any questions about this or your ability to approve a fare?
Just that the funding was planned to run out or the grant was like unexpectedly
Plan to run out.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, they give
Mhm.
grants for pilots, but not ongoing
Oh,
operations.
got it, okay.
So it's one of those. So in general, I wanted to make sure you're all familiar with our services. We have fixed route, that's the bus routes, that's the bus stops. Anybody can get on. All of our services are ADA accessible. When you have fixed route, you are required to do a complimentary paratransit service that goes along with your fixed route. We also have Lawrence Transit on demand, previously Nightline. This runs when our fixed route does not run. And it's a microtransit style service. And this is the only one that has the proposed fare for next year. The fixed route and paratransit are still proposed to be fare free in 2026. So we're only going to talk about the on-demand portion today. Here's a little bit more about that. Right now, Lawrence Transit On Demand is an app-based shared ride service. You can still call in to book, but you'll see it later, but 94% of our riders use the app. And so this provides our Sunday service, and it also provides our overnight service. And that was created for individuals to get to work. Lawrence is fortunate to have a lot of third shift places to work. And so this is our commitment to making sure people can get around when the fixed route is not running. All vehicles are ADA accessible and they have bike racks. Trips are scheduled in advance and in the moment. Though primarily in advance because folks are using it to get to work and things they have a schedule for. Looks like we're very close to that. But here's a little bit more about the on-demand service. So it started in September 2023 with funds from the KDOT AIC grant. Pilot, not operations. We were fortunate to get several years of the technology covered by that grant. So on-demand takes up about 10% of our total contracted revenue hours. It was on a slide previously. We have 104,000 total hours for our transit contract that the city has. And so we have to share those hours among all services. 10% of our revenue service hours is about average of what we've put towards this program since we started it in 2014. So we're kind of on track at providing that amount of service. About 30,000 average annual rides, almost 90,000 since we launched it. We launched it in September of 2023. So our full year of data is 2024 data, but we're making some inferences based on what we did do in 2023. And here again, most of our riders are booking through the app. Nightline, precursor to on-demand, 2014 to 2022. This used to be $2 a ride and scheduled only in advance by phone. And so you can see we did about half the amount of rides. Just, I think, if you didn't know your schedule in advance, you couldn't really use the service. Okay. So close. Okay. So why fares? A little bit. Multiple reasons. Oh, are we gonna get the big screen? Okay. We have 8% of our rides per month are no-shows, and so having a free service, this kind of happens a lot. And when you're in the fixed route, it's all good. Okay, beautiful. I'm not gonna touch it. So that's almost 400 trips per month that could be going to riders, and we hear a lot from individuals that they can't book their trips as reliably because we've opened it up wide, there's no barrier. But you know, kind of the trade-offs to having a free microtransit service, demand really slows down microtransit. It's much different from fixed route transit where the more the better, it's just gonna keep running no matter what. But these no-shows are really dragging our system down. We've implemented a suspension policy to try to see if we could get that number lower ahead of this, just to see what we could do. It touched it a little bit, but honestly not enough with this many rides still left on the table. So the app costs $31,000 per year. Projected revenue 2024 had closer to 12% of our revenue hours. So we're going somewhere in the middle you know, I'm not gonna assume we're gonna have the same amount in 2024 if we pulled back service, if we're keeping service hours at 10%. So somewhere in between there, but $3 will cover the technology fee, even at 2023 levels. We have data that shows we have a really high latent demand, and so we don't anticipate a huge drop off in ridership. So we're not building that into our assumptions.
How much does it cost to operate?
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why not charge fares to cover the cost of how much it costs
It
to operate?
costs at times up to $40 per passenger.
Hmm,
So public transit is a subsidized service
Yep.
across the board. And that's
Yeah.
vehicle, fuel, maintenance, that's the total cost.
mhm,
And then the driver.
yeah,
Um,
I'm just thinking too, like, how much does it charge, how much do you pay to get an Uber, right?
Oh,
Like,
it can definitely be up there. My wife took 2 Uber rides to go downtown and paid, I think, like $30 combined
Yeah.
between them. So 2
Yeah.
rides at $6 total would have been a lot cheaper.
mhm. So we're trying to keep our, you know, public transit mindset. We get subsidized by the federal government. This fare is to cover the cost of the app, which as we'll go through some more data, and we can kind of get into that. Have some scenarios that we don't think will work. Keeping the app without the $3 fare, the potential to, you know, the opportunity cost is pretty high, 151,000 potentially per year loss. So that's reason number one that we don't, you know, even with the $3 fare, we're feeling fine. So here's a little bit more about that cost per passenger.
mhm,
The call ahead service had about half the amount of rides. And so the cost per passenger went up in previous versions. So right now we're doing 4 passengers per hour, which for our size is quite high for this type of a service where you're going curb to curb, you're going to your house, you know, in a non-fixed alignment. So the algorithm-based trip grouping and the in-the-moment booking feature. So if someone cancels their ride, someone else can get slotted in. Whereas before we were also working on paper manifests and call ahead, you know, so once the booking closed, the booking was closed, and if everybody canceled, then that's quite expensive because you're not bringing anybody anywhere. So this keeps bringing people into the service. And to us, this is a better use of taxpayer dollars is to keep this cost per passenger low. Here's your regional comparisons. Topeka has a $6 minimum, $12 maximum in certain zones. Iris and KCMO, minimum 3, max 5, airport 10. There's the Iris one has more nuance. Both of these are daytime services that run concurrently with their fixed route. So it's a little bit of a different use case. They want people to use those only when they really have to, or if they can't access the fixed route, because Ride KC has still some functionally fare-free stuff. If you're taking their Iris to an approved node, it's a free trip, but only if you can't get fixed route where you're going and you're plugging into the fixed route. So we don't have any of that because our services run when the fixed route doesn't. So a little bit different, but you can see regionally, we're aligned or better, or with this proposal would be lower. Spare Wallet would be the program that we would use. It's integrated into the app. You won't have to download something else. It'll just be there. They have a lot of different options. It's through Stripe. So there's, you know, I think there's some unbanked options as well for people to use it. So there are credit card fees, but we did some conservative scenario building. A Spare Wallet can do transaction grouping, so it's not, you know, you're not hitting a fee every time. But we did kind of an expensive scenario, so I think worst case, this is what we're getting from our $3, so not bad. Accessibility first design, so the app is constantly being improved, things like that. Okay, so that was kind of it. So I'm here to field questions. The survey is still open. The next presentation you'll get from me will be a report of the survey data, so you can I'll kind of break it down. Who are the users? What are they using the service for? What do they say about? We've got questions in there. With a $3 fare, I'll be able to use this service the same, less frequently, not at all. So I did 3, 5, and 7, just to kind of see where the cost breaks would be. And some of that data is already coming in, and it's quite interesting, but I'll summarize that for you. And based on that information and this information, we'll ask you to vote yes or no to approve a $3 fare for lunch transit on demand.
Hey folks, hopefully everybody can hear me. I had a question on for next time. I'm looking at some of the data that's available right now. When you're compiling it, is it possible to like build a crosstab on the folks who use the fare or to use the on-demand service multiple times, so probably a few times per month through 4 times per week, and whether or not they answered if they wouldn't be able to use the service if we charge $3 per trip or more or less often. So combine those two questions so we can see how many folks are currently using it 4 times a week and then wouldn't be able to use it if we did the fare.
Yes, yeah, we'll look at each option. Primarily, this service was built to get people to work, so we will be taking an extra focus on that. Let me know. I think this is a good addition to that. Because the service is free, a lot of folks we've heard anecdotally, prefer to do groceries on this because it takes you to and from your house. So we want to make sure, the fixed route will still be free if that option is still there. And so, if the group that we were going to focus on was work trips, but we'll look at all options and give you as much as we can on that data, including what you're asking for, Ryan. So we'll make it pretty robust, and all that data will be there. You'll be able to see it all as well, and you can download it if you had any other thoughts or if you wanted to dive deeper, but certainly we can make that happen.
Do you have any of that data from the app?
We have heat map data. So we have all the location data. We have from the app, you self-select if you're a KU student or not using it. But it doesn't collect upfront like demographic data. And because it's not a paratransit system, you can just kind of log in and use it. So I know where people are going, how long their trip took. So I have all the robust trip data in Spare, and then I have past survey data that Spare occasionally does their own surveys that focuses more on demographics. We tend to go lighter on demographics just because it's a barrier for people finishing the survey. So there's kind of we put in, I think, only how often do you take in and what kind of trips are you taking for this survey? But we didn't split it by age or gender or anything like that. But some of the surveys that Spare does that I do have has more of that there.
Would they pay through the app?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, no, I am really opposed to fare-free transit, like full stop. I know KC has really struggled with it. And I think having reliable, faster transit is more important to get people on public transit than free. And then on-demand transit is the most expensive kind of transit to provide because it's doorstop to doorstop.
Right.
And it's pretty much a luxury good. It is like ordering an Uber. But I also recognize getting people to work and we don't have Sunday service. Given the trade-off between fares for transit and getting, I don't know what the cost is to start running service on Sunday.
It would be a considerable chunk, yeah.
Yeah.
Like basically 16% additional because it's effectively doing 1 additional day out of our 6 days of operation right now, at minimum.
It's quite high. So we even looked at just to double check, if we didn't do this service and put all the hours back into fixed route, you can't even see it. The amount of hours we put in here are relatively, like adding 30 minutes one trip across the whole year is.
Yeah. But I mean, that conversation aside, and again, I think reliable transit is more important for people to get people on transit and using it regularly. But for this, I see it as sort of a luxury good. And like you would be getting an Uber or, a ride from somebody else, something like that, if you weren't taking like an on-demand ride like this. And so, I mean, personally, I think $3 is probably too low, but you have to balance it with people's ability to pay and equity considerations too. But I mean, I would fully support this, and I think it's really important that we do that too. And what you were talking about earlier, people having skin in the game, when I get a free ticket to an event, I may not go because I haven't paid for it, right? Somebody gave it to me, and so I'm like, do I go to the KU game this weekend? Maybe, maybe not. But if I've paid for that ticket, I'm much more likely to go. I think that's a big reason why there's no shows too, because people they're like, I don't have to take it. And then it also sort of signals that, are the rides necessary too?
Right, so that will shake out with adding the fares we're thinking, and so.
Yeah.
You'll see in some of the survey data, people who do use it to work are having to take Ubers.
Yeah.
And so that's less than ideal. And so hopefully we'll open up trips for workers.
Yeah.
Here.
I saw that KCATA is going to start doing fares again in the spring because Fare Free didn't work.
Go ahead. Really suffering with that right now too.
I mean, I know fares are a relatively small portion of your budget, but I think it was like $10 million that KCATA was losing without fares, and that's not insignificant.
Right, ours is
Significantly less.
$200,000 that we're not taking in because of agreements with KU and how we do our service in that way. And so KU students always will ride free, and that makes up a high, significant part of our ridership.
Are there any exceptions for people who couldn't pay or like just flat fee across the board?
On this service, we're not proposing any exceptions.
This isn't our required.
Right. It's not paratransit, it's
Transit.
premium service. And then especially while the fixed route remains free, there's an option to get those essential needs met in a different way.
So how does it work if someone who would use paratransit would be using at the same time that it would be the nighttime on-demand stuff? Then how does it?
Right now, paratransit's only when fixed route operates. And so right now they're not commingled at all. Questions, other things you'll want to see besides the survey report in November? Yes.
Remind me, how is Lawrence Speaks, like, how's it advertised? So will folks who currently use the program on like the app, will they see this survey available or?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
there's a notification within the app, absolutely, and we made it required, so you have to click through it to book your next trip. So we've been seeing people taking it as they go through there. We did a press release that got picked up by both papers and social media. So we've got our particular channels that we use, and also directly communicating with the riders who use the on-demand service.
Be curious to see the app data at the next meeting. I think a survey is good, but I think the app data is probably more accurate, even if it doesn't have demographics, that's okay, but if we know how many repeat riders or where people are going or what times, things like that would be helpful.
I'd say how many rides are by users that use it this often.
I would think so, yeah.
Yes, we weren't specifically gonna do that level of analysis because it's quite a lot of analysis, so that it feels a little bit out of scope for it. We can, if needed.
I'd say the more analysis, the better. I mean, if some folks won't be able to use
Yeah.
this service anyway, then I'd lean on the side.
But
of
how
it.
much analysis do you put into something like this, right?
Yeah.
Like, how much stuff I don't know, I disagree personally.
I agree. It just seems like the app probably has the better data set than the
Yeah.
survey.
Depending on what you're looking for. To me, the data I'm looking for is where's the point at which people can't pay? And if we lose all of our ridership, then the cost per passenger goes up again, so it's finding that balance. People fall off of the data set, so it's like the survey has our most active users within this 1 month period, whereas if I pull data from a whole year, people may or may not be using, they use the app, they stop using it, they move out of town. So there's, especially the case.
They've taken a
Are all,
first shift job instead of a third shift job, so.
yeah, so there is so much data that I can pull from Spare. It would be endless and without like a tightly defined parameter about how we'd want to do that, which to do that, I would need to bring you a presentation to confirm the tightly bound parameters. That's certainly, if you direct me to do that, I will do it. I think all of the decision-making transit has made for the past 5 or more years has been based on our public feedback processes. And then we build the survey based on what we see in the data. We did preliminary looks at things, and we have a lot of anecdotal and customer service emails that we also pull into it. So if there's a specific, one specific question you'd like to have in the data, we can add like that in. If it's, are you looking for how many, you can tell me what specific thing you'd like me to pull from the data and I'll add it in. But I feel comfortable using the survey data.
I think what would be helpful for me is understanding how representative the survey is. So, and that can be extremely simple, like there were 10,000 people who used the app last year and we heard from 1,000 people on the survey. So then we know in our heads, this percent of people, this percent of the riders filled out the survey. And we can kind of check whether it feels representative.
We don't have there's no way to tell which users are active. And so I don't know, we have a database of thousands of people who've used the app once and never again.
Yeah.
And almost none of the surveys that certainly transit does are statistically significant.
Yeah,
Or representative.
you're basically talking about a convenient sample of the people who do ride the most and have the most interest in telling you what they want you to hear, which is fine. It's a great way to collect that kind of information, but the data is going to be a lot more useful, I think.
Yeah, even just anecdotally though, if you think like, this is roughly 10% of our ridership, that would be helpful for me.
I have a question about survey questions, like, and how they're decided. Like, sometimes we ask like race, ethnicity questions, sometimes we ask income questions, like on surveys. How is that determined? And when you were designing the survey, were there any factors that you like would be I don't know, like income, right? Like, is income helpful to see in a survey response to compare what the cost of the trip is? I don't know.
It's one of those questions that we've seen become a barrier to people finishing the survey,
Yeah.
so we decide to leave it out
Yeah.
on most of these. We have it on the surveys that Spare
Yeah.
has done, but mostly relying on people answering if $3 is too much. That
Yeah.
tells you what you need to know.
Yep,
Yeah, so staff creates our own survey questions.
that makes sense.
Are they clicking like multiple choice in
Here,
the survey?
This is it.
How long is it? Oh, it's
Mhm.
kind of long, yeah.
I don't think it's long, you just clicking multiple choice.
Well, I do a lot of surveying in my job. I can see why you wanted
You don't
to
want
put some
extra
yeah.
questions.
Did
But
you
it's
say
good
they
to
have
get
to do it all before?
There's
they
only
can-
one required question.
Okay.
And they just have they get the notification that there's a survey and they have to accept that they've seen that there's a survey. They don't have to take the survey.
Okay.
Yeah. They just have to acknowledge
The If it's a notification, people love the app.
Yeah. All of our users, when the next time they open it, there's a notification that blocks your screen. So you say, I've read it. And 94% of our riders are booking on the app, so we felt pretty comfortable that we were reaching people appropriately.
Are they booking typically right before they need the ride?
It's a mixture.
Okay, cause I wouldn't wanna take like a big survey if I was like, oh, I need to get my ride scheduled, so.
Yeah, anecdotally, most people are scheduling in advance because it's such a popular service. You can't often get a ride in the moment when you need one.
I had a quick question, just kind of a stupid technical thing. I've been trying to think, what kind of vehicles are people using for these? Are entire city buses coming to pick up one person and take them to their job?
We're using the small 15-passenger cutaways.
Okay, makes more
So
sense.
they're still ADA accessible and have bike racks and, driven by our drivers, assets we already have, didn't have to procure a new fleet for this.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of figured it would be cheaper than just using oversized current vehicles and having to buy completely new ones, especially because I've heard many times that it's the drivers that are definitely the most expensive part of operating a system.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, that is absolutely true. And then, you can book for multiple people in the app, so it kind of just maximizes our potential passengers per hour. If you leave more space, or if you're bringing kids or whatever with you, you can do that.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. We'll pull some of this in. I'll rewatch the recording and get your comments incorporated into what I'll bring next time, but we'll be doing deep dive into the data. This will be put on the, there's a project page for this, for the on-demand on the transit website. And so I'll add this to there publicly. And then we can bring it back up next week as well with the report. Thank you all.
Staff and board.
Set up and board.
Yep.
I'll go first since I'm on the North Lawrence corridor study. I yesterday or today got an email about planning first meeting, so nothing to report yet other than it's gonna happen.
I don't have any, there hasn't been a meeting since our last meeting for the bike steering plan committee.
Any other board member updates? Not related to the board, but the city's hosting an active transportation conference next week. Well, KDOT is, but it's here. Yeah. Should be really good. Do you want to talk about MSO campus or?
I think probably, we did do an update to the governing body, last week. And, received that approval on the final, phase, which I call 1.5, we call phase 2, but, that was something that, we were very prepared for going into, didn't know exactly what the outcome would be, but, felt like, we had a compelling rationale on the why, and, we did receive a 4-0 vote. Bart Littlejohn was out of town or out of pocket last week. So we are moving forward on that project, which is very exciting. We had some staff there that had told me when I started that was never going to happen in their lifetimes. And so I guess they're going to see it happen. So that's pretty exciting. And then we
And
also.
as a reminder, that was the solid waste and central maintenance
that's
garage,
right.
and this is the large construction contract for that. So they're able to start procuring equipment and some of the long lead time items. And we'll we'll see them like break ground to start on those, footings like March timeframe as well.
And that's the step that we need to happen so that we can start to get out of the floodway at 11th and Haskell. So big deal there. And it was also mentioned again about disposition of properties because we will be consolidating. So we will have some properties that we will be looking at, and I'm feeling that'll come up as part of the corridor study because we at least have one.
North Lawrence.
Yeah, the North Lawrence study, because we at least have one property up in there
Yeah.
that I currently opt out of. And I think the other big thing is we were going to be coming to you with our KPIs this next time, so we can also show you an updates we have on the Canvas project, which might be kind of fun. So, cool. Anything else, guys? I know
We
have other things.
also got the 3-year rate approved for solid waste and the 1-year rate with the new ERUs that you received the presentation on, 1-year rate for stormwater.
Second reading on that tomorrow night.
I know that
We'll
was
be bringing
contentious.
that back to you again next year for kind of feedback on what we've seen and what you've seen, and then looking at, do we want to try to set a multi-year rate on that? So we'll be asking you guys about that. Because right now we didn't want to do that. We wanted to stick with the 1-year rate, to see how things went. So.
I also wanted to let everyone know, we do have staff attending a local consult meeting. So KDOT, every 2 years, they put out local consult meetings across the state to gather input from a lot of municipalities and other just Kansas in general about expansion and modernization projects. And so we attended the meeting last week that was in Topeka, or it was Thursday, October 9th, actually. And then the one tomorrow is in KCK. So we're going to talk about some of the needs, including 6th Street west of the South Lawrence traffic way. We might have something to report back on.
Was there ever like, I know these are like the campus, it was like multi-phased, but was there ever really concern that they weren't gonna finish the project?
Oh, yeah,
Really?
Yeah.
for sure.
Huh? Okay.
It started out as water distribution and sanitary collections field group.
Mhm.
Like that's what it was over 10 years ago. It was just gonna be for that group because the building they were in was starting to fall apart. And water, wastewater had more of the funding and the CIP in place to start planning for that. And then with the MSO, with the merger and MSO, that's when it came about to be an MSO field campus, like in 2019.
Mhm.
And then as it kind of evolved into what makes sense to bring all of these divisions together and where do we have a lot of need. And then we were able to show the full scale of the need and all the regulatory impacts, at 11th Haskell and all of that.
Yeah, I'm wondering, I mean, I don't know when it'll be done, but maybe we consider moving our meetings to the new facility.
Oh, I think that would be great.
What's that? Say again?
Moving our meetings there.
Oh,
Once
that would
it's
be
done.
pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yes.
When
we
do
have
you
really good
expect-
meeting space.
Yeah, when do you expect it will be?
We'll be moving in like in August. It'll take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
Bus stop near it?
Um,
I think there is.
the closest is Hood on O'Connell and,
Yeah, she does.
yeah. Is it O'Connell in 19th or is it O'Connell in Venture Park area?
I'd have to pull it up. There's a bunch of those over the right. over there.
19.
Right.
There should be.
I see the bus.
Almost
exactly.
You see it?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, but we would
It's a
move
big.
in, as the folks you interact with here, we'll move in late next summer.
No, it's Venture Park.
Okay,
Okay.
but then the rest of the folks for central maintenance garage and solid waste end of 27.
Mhm, mhm.
But I think the original plan of the basing was 2032.
Oh, wow.
Or something to that effect, it was after 2030 before it would be all done, so
That's awesome.
this is a pretty big, but a lot of that.
So Route
came
5,
from
yeah.
Just not.
I was just trying to think which
buildings because it was a lot of this ones at first.
Mm.
Stop.
And consolidating operations into 2 large boxes.
Mhm.
And really looking at efficiencies with our construction manager of risk.
Nice. It's great. It's great that it moved up timeline.
It did it, and ultimately saves taxpayers costs because price escalations.
Just keep going higher. Yep.
It looks like Route 5 is right there at Venture Park.
Nice.
And O'Connell. So trying to think, that's about 3 blocks up to the entrance and then,
Take your bike.
yes. We have bike facilities.
Cool. I can't wait to see him. Thank you. I think that's it. Do we have a motion to, unless there's anything else? Speak now, forever hold your peace.
Just a note that we will be looking at those KPIs. Next month, we just had to go through an update and we haven't shared them with anyone yet, so we're looking forward to have that conversation and
Cool, awesome. All right, then shall we have a motion to?
I adjourn or vote to adjourn.
I second. All those in
Anyone
favor?
opposed?
We don't have to do that, I don't think.
It's just a privileged motion.